Today, we are diving into the world of one of the most complex, most controversial artists of the 20th century, Pier Paolo Pasolini. This guy was a poet, a filmmaker, an intellectual, a political lightning rod, and his work is this incredible, messy, and brilliant mix of Marxism, psychology, and a very, very unconventional take on Catholicism. And to really get a handle on Pasolini, we have to start with a huge provocative question he asked. We've all heard of the Oedipus complex, right? Well, Pasolini wants us to throw out everything we think we know about it. What if that whole story isn't really about the son's dark desires? What if it's about something else entirely? So yeah, let's start right there, with his idea of Oedipus without the complex. We're gonna look at how Pasolini took this foundational myth of Western culture and used it to attack one of the biggest ideas in modern psychology. Okay, so first a quick refresher. Before Pasolini, there were basically two ways to see Oedipus. For the ancient Greeks, Sophocles' play was all about fate. It's a tragedy where a man just can't escape his terrible destiny. But then fast forward a couple thousand years, and Sigmund Freud comes along and completely reinvents it. For Freud, it becomes the Oedipus complex, this universal, supposedly built-in fantasy that every little boy wants to, get rid of his dad and marry his mom. Then, in 1967, Pasolini crashes the party with his film Oedipo Re. And this was not just another movie version of the play. Oh no, this was a full-on attack. He used the myth not to prove Freud's theory, but to put the theory itself on trial. And he said it himself, perfectly. Look at this quote. He completely flipped the script. He wasn't using a modern idea to explain an ancient story. He was using the ancient story to pick apart the modern idea. I mean, that's just a totally radical way to think about it. So how did he do it? Well, in his film, the story doesn't start in ancient Greece. It starts in 1920s Italy, and we see a father who is just seething with jealousy over his newborn son. Pasolini's argument is that the problem doesn't start with the son. It starts with the father, who lives in this patriarchal world where he's terrified of being replaced. So the son's aggression later on, it's not some innate drive. It's just a reaction to the hostility he got from day one. The blame gets shifted completely. Okay, so if Pasolini is busy tearing down a huge pillar of Freudian thought, what's he trying to build in its place, right? He's not just doing this for fun. This whole critique was part of a much, much bigger and frankly, a wildly ambitious artistic project. And that brings us to his grand theory, the thing that ties so much of his work together, what he called the cinema of poetry. So what is that? Well, Pasolini believed that film has its own unique language. It's not like written words, which can be abstract. Cinema is always concrete. It's always an image of a real thing. And he argued this language is fundamentally subjective and irrational. It's like a dream. And because of that, it can get to a deeper reality that normal logic just can't touch. His logic for this is actually pretty cool. First, he says cinema has no dictionary. You can't look up what a specific tree in a film means. It's just that tree. Second, it uses what he called signs. These are basically just images ripped straight from reality itself. And third, these signs, a gesture, a look, a memory, they're pre-rational. They speak directly to our subconscious, to the part of us that dreams. And people knew just how radical this was. As the critic Lloyd Hughes said, the whole thing was insanely ambitious. Pasolini wasn't just trying to make artsy, poetic films. He was trying to prove that the very DNA of cinema is poetry. So, what's the end goal here? For Pasolini, it was all about expressing what he called his love for reality. The cinema of poetry lets a director grab something from the real world, a face in a crowd, the way someone moves their hands, a dusty landscape, and by putting a frame around it, you isolate it, you adore it. And in doing that, you reveal its hidden, almost sacred power. Now, this whole theory found its most joyful, most optimistic expression in a series of films he made in the early 1970s. They're known today as the Trilogy of Life. And these films were his take on some classic medieval story collections, the Decameron, the Canterbury Tales, and the 1001 Arabian Nights. And let me tell you, these movies are a world away from the heavy intellectual vibe of Oedipo Re. They are earthy, hilarious, and unapologetically sexual. I love this one critic's description of them. A bucolic paradise of loose morality and body circumstance. I mean, that's perfect. They just celebrate life, the body, and simple, messy human pleasure. But underneath all the fun, there was a really deep political mission. Pasolini was trying to create a fantasy. a dream of a world before industry, before what he called disgusting consumerism, came along and, in his view, just flattened everything. This was his vision of a more authentic, more innocent humanity. It was really his last great hope. And then it all came crashing down. The dream of a liberated, poetic paradise just collapsed. And in its place, he gave us one final, absolutely terrifying nightmare. In 1975, Pasolini did something you almost never see an artist do. In a newspaper article, he publicly renounced his own films. He completely rejected the trilogy of life, basically saying that the hopeful vision he'd created was a lie, that it just wasn't possible anymore. And the result of that complete disillusionment was his final film, Salo. And the contrast is just stark. Where the trilogy was hopeful, Salo is the definition of pessimistic. Where the trilogy celebrated sexuality in the body, Salo shows the absolute, total degradation of the human body. The beautiful paradise he imagined was gone, replaced by this horrific vision of pure abusive power. So, in the end, Pasolini is one of cinema's great enigmas. I think this quote really nails it. He was this artist constantly juggling these huge, contradictory ideas: Marx, Freud, Jesus Christ. He was a Marxist who loved ancient traditions, a critic of Freud who was obsessed with psychology, an atheist who couldn't stop thinking about the sacred. And his work leaves us with this massive question. In a world that feels like it's falling apart, what is art supposed to do? Is its job to show us a dream of a better world, or is it to force us to stare, without blinking, right into the abyss?